Hey, what's up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. We're back. We're on site, on location here at TPI Oceanside. It's a beautiful day. We're going to talk some irons, T-Series stuff, but before we do that, let's do some introductions. Who are you?
I don't know today. They know who I am.
Tony Covey, but we have two special guests. People that know far more about this topic than we do, so we're going to talk to the experts. We have Marnie. Marnie, what do you do?
I am the Director of Product Development for the irons category at Titleist Golf. So just basically responsible for these products right here, start to finish, essentially.
Small job, just easy. Good work if you can find it. We'll have a lot of questions for Marnie, and we have JJ. JJ, what do you do here at Titleist?
I'm the Director of Clubs on the PGA Tour. I'm the one who asks Marnie for the impossible and makes him deliver each time.
Well, we're going to get to that for sure, but let's start with just kind of big picture stuff. So T-Series, maybe go back just really quickly to start. The previous generation did really, really well, obviously on tour and at retail. So in terms of starting with a new line of clubs, what were kind of the design goals, or what were those impossible things that you were asking for along that road? And Marnie goes, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think we always have one of the hardest meetings is right after a tour launch, where Marnie is kind of done with previous and well on the road to the next whatever. And okay, what else do you want? And it's normally that honeymoon phase where everything's great, so we have to draw out of our players and our tour reps those little changes. And so like when you look at a T100, it is, hey, make it look like a blade, feel like a blade, but play like a game improvement club. And those are those things that we're asking for.
Yeah.
And so the big one in this lineup was feel across the lineup with some small performance variables we were looking for.
So emphasis on feel, and when you talk about that a little bit, because I know you have big design emphasis, but what does that mean? Like when tour players or people out there are saying, hey, I want a club that feels better, how do you translate that to market? What does better mean? And then how do you figure out what better means? Like how do you go about that?
Yeah, I think we've asked tour players for it, and it's the coolest part when you talk about feel with a tour player is the pause. Describe feel. There's never like a quick answer on the tip of their tongue. There's always okay, I don't know how to describe that, but we've all hit a blade and you hit it right on the center, and there's that feedback up the shaft through your hands, the sound feedback that we all have felt, and it's what probably got us hooked on golf. And the first time we remember as a kid hitting that shot and coming out of the center and reacting how we want. And so it's giving it to Marnie, and how do you quantify that?
Yeah, and so he talked about, a couple aspects. So there's the tactile, at impact, which comes through the shaft into your hands, into the rest of your body. And then the audible, like the acoustic, right? So those two things, like in particular the acoustic especially, we can measure, right? So we can take sound recordings out here at TPI, and then we can compare that to our predictions in our models, right? So we have 3D CAD models of each of our products. We can then take that into a simulation and kind of simulate how that club is going to respond audibly in a computer.
How much prototyping you do in terms of like putting product into JJ's players' hands, where it's almost like the eye test, right? Here's two, like better like this, better like that. Now this one or that one, how much is purely that tour player feedback, like this is what feels good versus what you're doing in the lab and say, well, this sound signature looks good?
Yeah, tour is always the validation, right? So we have all our models and theories and everything else, but proof is in the pudding when we give it to JJ and he takes it out on tour, gives it to players to hit. And if the response isn't like, this is better from them, then okay, back to the drawing board. But again, so...
And we get pretty lucky on irons because he can hide technologies in old chassis that when you were all at a tour event, you're not going to see a picture and know a difference.
Right.
So like in the T100, for example, he handed me 2 irons one day and said, go test this. Didn't tell me what's under the hood, didn't tell me what's current and what's got new technology in it. And we put a piece of tape on the back and we took it to a tour event, and we would just have players hit A versus B. Tell me which feels better. And we would just make little cross markings on it. And when we got to the end of the week, we just sent Marnie a picture. here's this one, and one's filled with dashes across the back. He goes, great. That was a technology I was going to put in the next T100 to make it feel better. And it won hands down. And so it was like, okay, we're off to the races on one thing to make that feel better.
So with that, like, what was it? Like, what were you in that situation? What were you testing, or what were you evaluating if it was so clear to tour
Yeah,
players?
in the case of the T100, it's all structural differences, right? The thickness in the upper cavity, the thickness in the lower cavity. That bar separating the two cavities.
Yeah, right there.
How that's engineered, the thickness of that as it goes across the face is different from the predecessor as well. So
Okay.
Are we talking literally like fractions of millimeters of difference in some cases?
in the thicknesses for the face, yeah, but for the bar, there's pretty significant differences in the amount of support of the face, especially in the center versus the previous generation.
So just kind of go back and recap too, from previous gen to this generation, big emphasis on feel. Do you feel like you achieved that? You feel like that's been like
That's been an overwhelming commentary. You know, we did, and when we look at feel, like we started a project years ago called Project Feel internally to focus on MBs, and what we looked at, and we kind of stole some from the Vokey team, is soul matters, CG position matters, material matters, structure matters, and the refinements of the soul, the refinements of the construction, and all of that kind of was a little bit like we've kind of learned in Metalwoods, is there's not going to be one thing that's going to just turn a light switch on. You got to turn a bunch of lights on to brighten the room. And so in this case, we were talking to players, and they were commentaries from like a Cam Young, just how that club got in and out of the ground differently, and he felt the ball just on the face and feeling better. Players like Jordan Spieth talking about the short irons, just the commentary of how much softer it felt. So we, I think, nailed it on feel, but we're also pushing Marnie for performance. Hey, who doesn't like to have a long iron launch a little higher, stay in the air a little bit better, have a little more forgiveness? Right. So those are when we're asking for the impossible. Is I want it to feel like a blade and perform like a T350. And so we're trying to push those variables at the long end of the bag where players often need help.
Right. And that is where our challenge is really on that end of the bag, especially to like generate more launch, more forgiveness on off center hits.
but without it feeling bad.
Correct.
Right? Without
Correct.
it feeling
Worse.
I'm assuming they use terms, yeah, like hollow or clicky or, you know, loud at the wrong times, right? And
Right.
trying to do that. Or you guys,
So the products you deal with on tour, let's take golf ball off the table for now, but within the club space, is T100 the one that is like the ultimate, don't screw it, make it way better or as better as you possibly can, but don't screw it up? Is that kind of number one on the list of clubs that are...
Yes and no. It's the most played iron on professional tours worldwide. But, you know, when we went from AP2 to the T-Series, it was, hey, we're going to take a leap of faith. We're going to shrink this. We're going to remove offset. We're going to make some fairly significant changes. And AP2 was pretty highly played. And we let the influence of some tour players drive that design. You know, Marnie came to an event, and again, the joke was always Jordan Spieth. He'd pull out a blade and go, God, I wish I was good enough to play these. And he'd hit 3 or 4 shots, and you're like, well, you're good enough to play it. But then he'd miss one just a little bit, and he'd lose 6 or 7 yards. He goes, that's the shot that would cost me.
yeah.
And then he'd go back to hitting T1 protos at that time, and he'd hit that same shot, and he'd lose 2 or 3 yards. He goes, that's the ball game for me. And so I think that was the driver, is there's still performance variables there that we can push Marnie. You know, find new ways to put tungsten in places, do those things. So we're still trying to push. But yeah, there are a couple handcuffs in terms of size, shape, feel that we're keeping on them in that T100.
Yeah, and that was probably the largest jump going from AP2 to T100, because that was the decision. Right? The decision was the T100 is going to be the ultimate tour iron. So that's when really tour was even more of a focus on that particular product, especially to design it for the best players in the world.
Interesting. So let's just kind of go through the lineup really quickly. I know, clubs have been out for a while, but some people might be seeing it for the first time. So talked about T100. Obviously, like I said, it's of the four, it's the smallest, heel to toe, etc. You call it kind of the ultimate tour iron. Why? Why does this one get that designation?
Well, you want to answer that?
I'll take that one. We're basically trying to combine a blade, a CB, and a game improvement iron into one thing. Make it look like a blade, perform and feel like a CB, and then give us in the long irons especially forgiveness in launch that everybody's looking for. So it's trying to be in a lot of camps for a really good player. It's fitting in a really nice spin variable. It's getting, we're in loft progressions that are traditional, more tour lofts. We're in all those spaces that a tour player is looking for from all those attributes.
So you got that. Then we go to the 150.
Which I'm told they did not just bend and caulk.
No bending and caulking on this one. But this replaces the S, right? Which we had T100S before. Now we have T150. Looks pretty similar to the 100.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the key differences between this and the 100?
So this one in particular is for someone who's just looking for a little bit more distance, right? They want a lot of the same aspects that T100 has, but a little more distance, a little bit more forgiveness, a little bit more forgiving look from address as well. So if you look at that from address, you'll see that the top line is a little bit thicker, especially than it was in T100S. Because if you remember, T100S was the exact same shape and size as T100 before.
Just bent and caulked.
Right? And
Just bent and caulked. That's all.
and we got feedback from the market. We got feedback from the market that, hey, it's a little bit small for this type of player. So these subtle changes to the sole, to the top line, still keeping the same loft progression at 2 degrees stronger than T100.
Right.
It warranted that name change with the size change.
My favorite part of the name change is Marnie has a formula from blade length and head volume and all these other variables, and compared T100 to this new model, and what was it, 49.6% difference. So instead of calling the T40 149.6, it became the T150.
I like the 149.6. That's interesting. So you got T150, we got that. Then we go to T200, which some might argue that this is the most substantially changed model from prior gen. Would you agree with that, or?
I would disagree. I'd say it's just
it's
350.
Okay.
But
sure.
Okay.
This was, when you look at hollow construction, it is incredibly popular on tour in the 2-3-4 iron space. That player that's stemming the tide to their woods in their bag. So this was a big driver from us from tour of, hey, there's a lot of things our players like about the ball speed, the launch, but we have a feel issue here, and really pushing Marnie and his team to improve the feel here.
Yeah, but to your point, every aspect of that club has changed pretty much, except for maybe the leading edge, and the number, right? But we did change the sole, so the trailing edge changed. We changed, how we attach the muscle plate to the back. We changed the chassis. We changed the location of the polymer core inside. The thickness of the polymer core is different. The face thicknesses are different, and the thickness profile across the face is different. So it's definitely changed a lot.
Different.
Yeah. But still, 350 is even more.
So before we get to 350, I want to ask you about this, because this is one of the things that we do get comments on from time to time. So this badge piece, this back piece, it is plastic, correct?
Correct.
So why are you using plastic, right? Convince people that it's not just because Titleist is trying to be cheap.
Right.
Like there's a reason,
yes,
right?
Yes, it's lighter weight, right? So anytime you can save weight and use that weight where you want it to help you with CG and MOI, it's just better. It's a better combination.
That's always the thing for me, is everybody's excited about multi-material in a driver. We went multi-material in an iron here, and that's the big performance variable when we look versus full steel constructions, is he's getting MOI and CG in spots that other club heads aren't, which is why we're seeing so much tour play in that space.
Right, and if you think about it, you look at, metalwoods have been doing it for a while in terms of using carbon fiber, right? It's a lightweight material. That's primarily the main reason you use carbon fiber, is to be able to save the weight and then use it elsewhere.
What did you do? Like you said, one of the biggest challenges was that, you said 2-3-4 iron guys on tour generate a lot of ball speed. A lot of times the acoustics are amplified, you know, when you have guys that are hitting it that hard. And so if something does sound too clicky or hollow or whatever, they're really going to notice it. So what did you do specifically on T200 to address those concerns from really
so the
fast
face
players?
face design had a big part to do with that. So there are areas of the face that were thickened, and there are also areas of the face that were made thinner, right? And how we did that really affected the acoustic, along with, again, having the polymer core is very important to the sound of the club. The thickness of that polymer core changed as well, which also helps the feel. And then also kind of the location of where we place that. It's now a little bit closer towards center face as well. So all these things in combination, you know, help change the feel.
This was a cool player test because during the process, Marnie's team made one change to an iron. Like, okay, let's do this one change, and we'd have 5 or 6 out there. And they were all like, okay, that's a little bit better. And players would say, that feels a little bit better. And then he's like, well, what if we just do all of them? And so we'll just change all this stuff. The structure of the muscle back plate, how that's adhered, the face geometry, the MI, all those things, and go, what if we just, if all of them tuned it a little bit, can we turn the volume way down by doing it all? And so like the tap test on this one is completely different than previously, down to how you pull the ball in. You know, if you don't think we put a microphone on how you rake a ball in, you're crazy, because we're checking everything, how it sounds rattling in your bag, you name it.
Yeah, so JJ touched on a couple other things in terms of this muscle plate, how it's attached is different, and also how this muscle plate was designed, also its stiffness, so the ribbing behind it is different as well, which also changes the acoustic as well.
Huh. And then there's a long iron version of that, right? There's different builds.
There's a utility version.
So there's a utility.
So that comes in 2, 3, 4 iron, right? And we found that these configurations were being fit more for players who are using T100 CB and MB. So you'll also notice that we have a 4 iron loft there at 23 versus the one in the set is a different loft, right? So, but that's the reason why.
And then the real most changed iron, the one that actually answers the question of what's most changed.
The one I hate to love.
The one, this is Tony has a love-hate relationship with 350s.
It's so big.
350.
Yes.
This is the biggest, baddest.
I feel like it's because it's 350% larger.
Is that what it is? I was
my
gonna say, was this part of your math as well? All the things that changed?
A little bit,
compared to our baseline of 100 was equal.
I'm not going to say it's exactly the same as what we did with 150, but it definitely moved in that direction.
So, talk me through this one. Who is it for? What are the biggest changes? Because, like I said, it is the most changed.
Yeah. So the way I like to talk about the whole line, with that one being at the top, is
I
that
should give this to you.
No.
as you go from 100 to 350, right? There's a priority on distance. So if you want to play a 350, you're probably wanting to hit it farther, and as far as you can with an iron, right? So this is someone who prioritizes distance. Obviously, also forgiveness as well from the look that we give them. But looking at this product versus the T300, the most significant change is that now it's using our multi-material hollow construction versus a deep cavity back construction that we had in the T300, which a deep cavity back is much more difficult to engineer great feel into versus this type of construction. The hollow, having this muscle plate on the back really helps you mitigate feel as well.
And this one, just so you know, is played on tour.
Not a lot of pitching wedges though.
Not a lot of pitching wedges, but
43 degrees, no strong. Yeah,
that during a commercial shoot, we had one built up just to have, and Zalatoris and Homa decided, let's see how fast we can hit it and how high we can hit it.
Yeah, that was fun.
And we were, getting in a 4 iron, up in like 150, 160 feet for them. And so we have a couple players that move this in and out to replace a hybrid in a long iron because it launches so well and it's got such great ball speed.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because Marnie, you talked about this being for the player who wants more distance, and certainly I see that. But during my fitting here with Joey, it was it was really about trying to get the ball higher, raise that peak height, and so it's counterintuitive to think
Well, if you
that
have speed,
this is the strongest lofted in the lineup, significantly more loft on a 7-iron than the 100, and or less loft, I should say.
Yes.
And for me, I just hit it way higher. And so, like, can you explain to people like the impact of how you make that happen and why maybe they shouldn't focus so much on the actual
they say
stock loft?
Right, they see that and they go, oh, it's loft jacking.
Well,
and to a degree, right, we know that this is true throughout the industry at different times. Theoretically, right, or in general, you decrease loft, you're hitting it with a more kind of blunt force. It's a cheap way to engineer distance. But that wasn't our experience with this one. And it doesn't sound like it's been others' experience where, like I said, of the 4, it's the lowest lofted. But yet, like when we were getting fit and going through, we both hit this one the highest. Right. So the peak height on the 350 was too high for me. Like I was getting like 48, 49 degrees descent angle.
So now imagine if it was weak lofted.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
That thing's going to be coming backwards at me.
So
it's going to
to
be
a certain
so
extent,
high.
as he moves CG, you have to move loft with it. Like they have to work together. He drives CG down, and you don't strengthen, it's just going to get absurdly high.
Right.
And you guys have an amount of speed too. So players with not as much speed as you guys are not going to hit it as high as you do, obviously, right? But the more speed you have, the more you realize the benefits of a construction like this. So the loft is going to give you speed, but that face is also going to give you more speed. It's also going to give you more launch. The construction of the body with the wide sole and the CG placement is also going to help you get launch. We put shafts in these irons that also help you get launch, right? So we're doing everything we can to get the ball up in the air with this product for players, especially that aren't, the fastest, right? So when you have speed, though,
and I think if you look at all 4 of the soles together, you can see how that thickness changes, and that helps to drive that center of gravity down.
Right.
And so I think it's that extensive testing of making sure the loft versus CG are in the right spot. Because like when we talk about dispersion and distance and descent angle as a fitting variable, the distance one isn't how far you hit it, it's hitting it a consistent distance. So now we have different forgivenesses based on your centerness of hit, but that descent angle is we want the ball to stop, and from a tour standpoint, we focus on that a ton. A player's playing the Honda Classic where the greens are the firmness of this table. A player wants their 4 and 5 iron to stop. There's no room to chase it up on there where when I'm saying, hey, how far do you hit your 5 iron, you're talking about total distance. Right. Your carry and total should be the same number.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, just interesting that's where we are. And the one that's gone, the 400's gone, Tony. Where did it go?
Marnie, where'd it go?
Marnie, where'd the 400 go?
we still have the 400. It's just not a new model,
Okay.
right? So it was a product that I would say, we brought a very similar construction from a Japanese product called the VG3 Type D, right, over. And we kind of tested it in the global market to see how it was received. And, it was received well, by some markets, but it didn't quite hit the target we were looking for.
Well-ish.
Globally, right? Because it really was, that club was designed to go up against very specific products in Japan, but we thought it would be interesting enough to try and bring it over to a global market, see how it worked out, and,
I guess it's a backhanded way of asking a question. Do you feel that this lineup, kind of covers all the bases, or do you feel like there's still room to kind of explore with other models potentially?
I think there's still room. There's definitely still room to explore other models, but this covers a pretty wide spread, right? You're now talking like with other models, you're going to be getting into very specific niches of golfers.
You have toys, JJ. Props.
Well, we talked a little bit about
I want to see what these are all about. Yeah.
Project Feel. And so, we started this kind of years ago where we said, how do you make the best feeling iron? And the thought process was, what if we try to make it for one player instead of every player, and then find out what we can learn? And so along that, we looked at materials, we looked at center of gravity, we looked at sole design, we looked at everything, and we used Justin Thomas as our guinea pig for it. And we started to make him an iron. And in doing that is we took advantage of Marnie's team, we took advantage of our machine shop with Scott Knutson and milling product. And so this is how his iron starts. And then it works through a series of processes.
Shaft that up. You figure
Yeah,
swing weight is.
absolutely. Swing weight of Z90.
And as it works through
Yeah,
the milling
so this
process,
one.
it allows us to kind of refine and get the shape.
So how
Inside,
long
you get
does
the
it take you to
fixture.
get to this point? Because obviously this didn't just.
So that gets forged.
Okay, so this is the forged piece.
That's the
Yep.
forged piece.
Okay, so you bang this shape
Yep.
and then
So
start
forged,
shaving
and then
away,
you start
And then we
milling
start cutting away what we don't want.
Right.
which seems to be a whole lot.
It seems
Yeah.
to be plenty.
So,
So-
out of that particular blank is we can make either a 7, an 8, a 9, or a P out of that shape.
Yeah.
And
So
then we have a
Scott,
second one for long irons.
Scott's got it down. You can see here how he mills in, his fixture point here. There's a nice dovetail on this thing here that you can see. So that way, that allows him to then get a very good reference point to then mill the rest of the iron very precisely.
So like, this was one of the early prototypes with.
So when you're doing this with,
So
so this
cool.
again, this, like I said, Justin's kind of the guinea pig there. What were you testing specifically with this set in terms of feel for him? Because like you said, it's,
We just.
can we go outside and hit these? We got to hit these on
Absolutely.
camera.
I don't know that we.
I think it's worth a try.
So
No
Pretty
offset.
sure it's not.
you want to look at multi-materials.
Make you a better ball
So
striker.
let's make a one-of-a-kind multi-material iron. JT hit that one and said it didn't feel very good. And so, okay, let's look at,
And didn't feel good, presumably because it was multi-material.
and so you're trying to move variables around. Let's make movable weight.
Yep. Let's see different center of gravity locations if he likes it more towards the toe
Right, so
or towards
this
the heel.
this one here obviously had kind of two little pockets, heel and toe, and then presumably maybe some
Put it right
tungsten
back
or
in the
something
middle. Yep.
in the middle.
I mean, there's no top line on this at
But
all.
he did not like that one.
Non-existent.
That one didn't feel
No,
good.
we looked at sole shape. So this one's got a little wider sole to it. We kind of even went into our old bag of tricks and we pulled out retro models.
Oh,
And this is all, to reiterate, this is all just trying to tune feel, right? This isn't even the performance piece of the equation.
He had a major with his 620 MBs. It was, how can we make this better for one player? And through that process, we found things about sole geometry. It was partially how we ended up in the variable bounce sole. We found a little bit about where Marnie is placing CG. And so we were able to take those one-offs and push Marnie's team into putting those into inline products that are better for you and I.
I don't think that one has a top line.
What do you need it for?
Well, that's, again, the cool part about it is Justin Thomas plays a T100 forehand. And so he realizes that all this cool stuff at some point didn't give him enough performance at the very top end of his bag. So he does it through a 5-iron and said, hey, I need more help beyond that. Showed him a T1 and goes, yep, this feels like my other irons, but gives me launch and forgiveness where I need it.
So that's a good segue, because we talked when we were with Marnie when pre-launch, talked about the idea of mixing and matching and building a combo set so that you're maintaining that 5-mile-an-hour ball speed between irons and making sure that you're hitting those descent angles. What percentage of the guys you work with on tour are using some type of blended set versus, I'm T100 from 4-iron through 9-iron?
We're just over 80% are mixing sets. And it could be, again, the Justin Thomas, who is 5 through 9 MB, and then a T1 4-iron. You have other players that are putting multiple irons in where they could have a T1 or T2 long iron and then move to CB, then move to MB. We have a few with 3 different model types. So what we're trying to do is not, if you looked at some companies 10, 15 years ago, you'd see a player with different shafts throughout their set. And what we find is that that's really hard. I always do the par 3 or the reachable par 5 example. If you're bringing 2 clubs up to the tee on that really long par 3, you don't want them to feel different. And that feel is shaft flex or shaft weight and club head. So what we're trying to do is create those ball speed gaps and create the launch conditions we want through head design. So if you play a dynamic gold in your 5-iron, I don't want to, throw something super light and soft in your 4-iron if I can have the head give me the help.
So for the average golfer, though, right, who can't come here and work with your fitting team and literally have every club in the bag to work through, how does the average golfer who's going to go into a big box store and get fit that way figure out where he needs to split the set if he's going to maintain those constant speeds and launch conditions you talked about?
Well, I think, our product specialists around the country, as we've kind of gone through this with our sales and marketing team and said, hey, we need to reinvest in long iron fitting packs, the fit off the 7-iron and calling it a day. Your subscribers and readers are showing that you guys have really done a great job of showing that every club in your bag matters. And so finding places that are carrying more than just a 7-iron is important, so that you can see those performance variables. We have other tools that allow you with looking at your launch conditions off a 7 and your ball speed to kind of have a sense on where those breaks go. But finding fitters that have a little bit more tools really kind of help drive you into positions that you're going to have a bag that you're going to be successful and really happy with.
Yeah, and how much of it, like, again, kind of this fitting environment philosophy we talked with, could you kind of roll this out at the same time as Project Feel and the new irons is kind of the, dip, dive, duck, dodge, and dip and dive, and all these, but we talked about the Ds, right? The 3 Ds that we have are distance, which you talked about as
Distance control.
distance consistency, right?
Yeah.
And control, not just maximum distance, but
Right.
talk about those 3 elements and like how important are those on tour? We can talk about how important they are in a retail environment because we've been through that, and I think that part's pretty clear, but are you using kind of those same philosophies and things like, when you're fitting a Justin Thomas or a Jordan Spieth who apparently can't hit muscle backs, that, the same kind of thing?
The beauty here at Titleist is that we've kind of utilized the pyramid of influence for a long time and said, hey, I always steal the line from Bob Vokey of, I have the greatest testers in the world because I can just take it out to tour and get feedback right away. That's a pretty good testing group if something feels good, flies good. So that's kind of where the 3 Ds were derived from, is what we, how often, Tony, do you get asked, what's the perfect spin on a driver?
Yeah.
Constantly, you're like, well, I need all these other variables.
Give me about 5 more pieces of information.
I'll
Some,
tell you.
you need some spin.
So you need some spin. That's a better answer. You need some, not too much.
Right.
And so we would get that from tour players. And so what we found, utilizing launch monitors is that peak height really kind of became a thing. It's an easy fitting variable for me. Is I like to kind of just show players their window and work them up or down from, it was a player that grew up in Texas. They're now playing on the PGA Tour. We're going to have to try to creep your window up. And that kind of turned in and was a different way to talk about descent angle.
Right.
And when we always talked about whether it's golf ball fitting or anything else, is that standard deviation of what's your highest spin, what's your lowest spin. So now that became that kind of distance control variable that we could move down. And I think we all kind of know dispersion, but again, how do you quantify the left and rightness of something? And as ShotLink on tours become a bigger thing, is we can really, really start quantifying a lot of those things for players and looks at parts of their bag. Max Homo was a fun example of that. He was one of my last full blade players, and put the 7-wood in from taking a 3-iron out, said I'm going to use it 1 week at Torrey, and then it never left the bag. And then comes out here and we were able to look at stats that Max had become elite ball striker everywhere to 200 yards, and outside 200 he was 140th plus in proximity. And his caddy and coach are laughing. We ended up pulling at that point 100 S. Well, they had been telling him, but a stat drove that home, and we pull a week in 100 S, and he just starts hitting these beautiful, gorgeous long irons, and they're just chuckling behind. Like, we've been begging him to do something for a while, and he starts hitting shots off down slopes. And 3 weeks later, his caddy's like, "Hey, make him a 5-iron." And so it's slowly like moving down Max's bag. So then we go, to Marty's team is how do we quantify that for everybody?
Has that changed with time? 'Cause we hear about tour players being notorious, stuck in their ways, not wanting to change anything because they won a tournament with this setup 6 years ago and that kind of thing. In the age of data now, where you have all these stats at your disposal, has it become easier to kind of convince a guy like, come on, man, like, look, it's right here, make the change?
I think so, and we're big on team environments. So if I'm going to sit down with, if you're the player and you're the swing coach and you're the mental coach or caddy and I'm the fitter, it's the three of us at some point can put the paper in front of you and said, let's make a decision on what we want to do.
Sounds like an intervention.
I was gonna say, sounds like
It can
an
be.
intervention. Listen.
But we do more fittings start in this room than on the tee 15 years ago where, okay, let's just walk through your bag and see what, it's a little bit like getting your chart. Hey, we did blood work before you got into your appointment. Here's where things are going to hurt. Let's go work the rehab.
Right. Well, and I think it's funny you mentioned dispersion too. I think part of that, the first part of it makes total sense. People see accuracy, right, in terms of left, right, like nothing better, right, than hitting that iron shot. You look up and it is going right where you think it is, right? And then it carries 15 yards too far, or it comes up 8 yards short. So I think the other part of that dispersion that I took from mine was like that front back number, so that you're not catching one pure and going, and all of a sudden it drops 800 RPM and just takes off like a flyer, right? Or the other piece being you catch it a little bit thin maybe, and now it comes up way, way, way short. That's part of it as well. So it's not just left to right, it's front to back as well.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part for Marty is he's got to keep the ball speed and spin consistency around the face for every player and then make all those shots still feel good.
Right. And in particular for 200, I mean, there was a goal there for that player in particular, because we were getting some feedback that this player was seeing some shots fly a little bit longer than they'd like. And so this iron has been improved in that aspect, right? That shot that's a little bit high on the face is going to be closer to that center turf shot that you're used to, your stock distance.
Yeah. What about, so we talked, we have these four. You mentioned having players like Max that was kind of one of the last muscle back holdouts, maybe a little bit. But you've also had some players go to muscle backs as this project has kind of taken off, whether it's a Cam Young or others. What are they finding in that type of process that they're not going to be able to get in kind of this retail environment that the rest of us kind of live in?
Yeah, what we see a lot with tour players is I had a tour player tell me years ago they were between an MB and a T100 that they hit more greens with a T1 and I made more birdies with an MB. And a little of their thought was I'd rather miss a cut, but when I'm on, shoot 65 than shoot 70 a lot. PGA Tour tucks a lot of pins, puts it a lot of shelves. So on their scoring irons they're often looking for shape. So they're looking for less forgiveness. They don't want stability in the blade. They want that thing to move because I'm going to try to get it to the back right and I'm going to flight a cut and try to get it to skip up on that shelf. And when I'm on, I want to hit a lot of shots close and make a lot of birdies. And then when you look at like a Cam Young, when he gets to a 4-iron, he's not hitting that shot.
Right.
He wants it to launch high, be forgiving, work off a variety of slopes. So that's why he's 4 and 5. He's a T2 3-iron because that's typically a tee shot club for him. 4-5 T100 where I want some forgiveness, and then 6 through 9 iron in his MB. And so in that 6 and 9 where I'm, or for him 7, 8, 9 where I'm really looking for shape, and so where Marty was able to kind of make him a special 6-iron that floats that sole width a little bit closer to his T1, because that's the one club he's like, I don't know if I want to play a blade and I don't know if I want to play a T1. So can I get kind of a tweener? And that's where we're kind of finding these little nudged areas for specific players. But he's still looking for help at the top end of the bag.
Yeah, and I would say, I'd add to that, that it's very specific things that, like in particular with Cam Smith and this 6-iron. It's like,
Cam Young.
Or Cam Young, sorry. Cam Young, can you just make this 6-iron fly a little bit higher? Is that possible? I love the way this looks. I love the way it goes through the ground, everything about it. But if it could just go a little bit higher, that'd be great. And so that's a very specific thing that we were able to
And
do
we're
for
talking
him.
3 to 5 feet.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah.
Is that, you
a
think, kind of
refined
the future of fitting at the tour level is almost like, hey, we've got these guys and we can make them these one-offs, these very slightly tuned one-offs exactly where they need it?
You know, I think everybody at this table probably swings harder at their lob wedge than any tour player. So the distance gap between the driver where they swing it really hard and their lob wedge that they're swinging really soft is our ball speeds on a lob wedge versus a tour player aren't very different, but our ball speeds versus a driver are very different. So there's still always going to be room at that top end of the bag where they're trying to make a club do a lot of things. So that hollow construction gives us a lot. You know, what we're seeing is a little bit, you know, part of the reason we tried some of this at the tour side is I'm always jealous that Aaron has so many lob wedge tools to work with, is so he gets a bigger toy box, and what we're finding are some similarities. And so it kind of goes back to some of our roots in saying, okay, when we graph this all out, where are these overlaps and can it actually help a lot of players and not just one? And, you know, where is this kind of almost flighted set where those long irons are launching really high and have really good ball speeds, and the short irons are a little bit different, more control, a little almost lower launching where we're controlling those peak heights.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me think to talk about what's next, right? Because you're always working on what's next, right? You're down the runway on
You're
whatever.
about to ask him what the next concept in his head is?
I was going to ask him if there were any conceptual models or, well, two-part question. Number one is I'm struggling to see within the lineup like where a CB goes. You know, where it's like every time you make an MB better, it turns into the T100. And so I'm struggling to see like where just like I said, a single piece forged cavity back iron fits in this situation because the T100 is so good, not because there isn't a place for it, but because of that. So that's one question. And then yes, conceptually, because it is a question we get, right? Like we had the concept irons, we've seen them, we haven't seen anything new in that line. Is there anything coming that people should be excited about, or what is the state of
Yeah,
concept?
the best answer I can give you is that potentially there is something coming, right? Because there are things that we're always working on which could potentially make it into a concept product. It's just whether or not they pan out into the performance difference that we were hoping for, or just to make a compelling enough case to be a product of that nature. Because we want to bring a concept product out because there's something different about it. You know, it's not just going to be, you know, similar performance to a T350. There's got to be something about it that's new, unique, different, pushing the limits in some way, and that's the reason to bring it out, right? And that doesn't come every year, right? So,
No.
or even every 2 years, right? So it's been a little while since we've had one, because again, we're kind of greedy in that respect, that we really want these products to have a big difference, and if it doesn't, then it's not coming out.
How much of what's in there right now came from what was, or I guess still
Yeah,
kinda is
it's funny
concept?
that you mentioned that, because not many people have asked that question, and the max impact technology was actually slated to be a concept iron, but because of the performance differences we were seeing in that technology, our boss at the time, Dan Stone, said we need to pull that forward. That needs to become global product right away. We're not going to wait for it to be a concept product and then bring it into the global line. The L-face technology as well is something that was being developed for concept products as well, but you know, we brought that out early as well.
What about the CB? Does that live on, do you think, or is that?
It still has a place. It's out there in a few numbers, and there is a soul difference there. So between the MB and the CB, that's where probably the largest difference is in terms of the sole. The long irons are a little bit more forgiving in launch, into 3 and 4 especially. So, yeah, I mean, that's where that product fits. I mean, JJ, you can speak more to that than anybody else, I think.
Marnie was in charge of its own demise by making the T1 look so good and feel so good.
Right.
You know, a funny one on that is Tom Hoagie, who is 9th on tour in stroke gain approach, came to our sales meeting and he was hitting 4 irons of all the new stuff, and he was a CB 4-iron user. And as he was leaving the day, he's like, yeah, you're gonna have to send me that 4-iron and the T100. And he's since swapped out his CB 4-iron because he just saw that little bit of benefit. And you know, those tour players are always looking for that 1% better. And so there was a player that was doing us a favor at a sales meeting, and that turned into, yeah, I'm gonna need one of those. So, you know, I think that CB has a place on tour that's still, you know, in play, but that T1 has taken a number of that players because it sits so perfectly where it is kind of a CB product, but gives you a little bit more forgiveness. And in this new one, with all the feel of that, it just checks so many boxes.
Well, that's what got me thinking about it. You said it's the ultimate tour iron, right? This idea of looking very muscle back-ish, you know, at address, but having qualities of a CB iron, like it almost can't help but cannibalize it to a degree. Like that's kind of what it's designed to do, and it seems to do it pretty well.
The guys you work with, JJ, like I'm curious, right? We've got a lot to choose from. We've got a history of things to choose from. The guys you work with, who has what you would consider to be kind of the oddest setup right now?
Oddest setup. I mean, top of my head, you know, a player like Cameron Young, to have 3 different very distinct models is unique. You know, to have that T200 with a hollow construction and then a T100 4 and 5, and then, you know, this one-of-a-kind MB that he's recently put in is a very kind of unique setup that I don't think would, paired with X7 iron shafts, is kind of just a unique setup. That, again, is I'm looking for kind of ball flight control and lower flight, and kind of really liked the X7 and what that felt like. And then, because he's changed a lot, when he was on the Korn Ferry Tour, he was like, just give me spin. I'm fine. He would go driver 5 wood at that time and wouldn't carry even a 3 wood.
That's how I play some par 3s.
I was going to say, right?
You know, and then on tour, you know, moving into kind of a 3 wood, 7 wood, and then sometimes hybrid. And then he's, again, found like, I love the stability of this really heavy stiff iron shaft, and I'm going to just use iron heads to help me at the top end of the bag. You know, it is just kind of a unique setup in that sense. You know, we're like a Brian Harmon who goes from CB to a hollow body construction and plays multiple. I think that's always the cool part, is each individual is fit individually and for 14 clubs. You know, where at the very least, I think it'd be so intriguing for a consumer. I mean, you guys post stuff all the time on like Arcos data. Like, the average player doesn't even know how far it goes, much less how high it goes.
Right.
And what the stopping angle of all their clubs are. You know, and kind of driving that. You know, even some tour players or high-level amateurs, like, what's the lowest club in your bag? It's your lob wedge. It's the lowest flying club in your bag, which is when, you know, the Vokey team is getting you in the right grind and getting fresh grooves. I mean, how fun is that first fresh groove one where that flight is low and ripping?
Comes out.
Just like that, when you get the right 4-iron setup and your eyes are too low and you're like, whoa, that's up a hit. So I think kind of that uniqueness that all these tour players that all swing it so beautifully have this kind of, you know, uniqueness in shaft and head type and loft and lie, that is kind of just adds to that for each individual player.
It's so wild too. You see that variation on tour, right, where these elite players achieve similar results in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But we have readers when, like, we, you know, show them a new adjustable driver. Like, why do you need that? Why don't you just learn how to swing?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
best players in the world are,
I had a quick side story. When I first started in the golf industry and clubs, I worked at a facility that had a small build room, and there had been a tour event back in the day, and I got to hear from the old club pros that there's always, well, they didn't need that in the 70s, 80s. They did it even more. They just did it themselves. They would put lead slugs in persimmon heads. They would shave down and change the bulge and roll on a head. They would back weight clubs. They would hand grind their irons. They would do crazy stuff back in the day to make it work. We now can just do it on the tee with a wrench, and swap a head in and out, or change a loft or a lie, or bend it really quick. We can just do things faster. But the evolution of getting your equipment to fit you has been there since the beginning of golf.
That's wild.
It is. Last question on fitting parts. So obviously, it's unbelievable to come out to TPI, right, and work with fitters. And
This plays all right.
I mean, it's average to above average. But
I mean, there is a part over there that doesn't.
yeah, they could finish that part over.
We'll get that done by end of day for you guys.
That would be good. But what advice? We want consumers to get fit. As a company, we want consumers to get fit. We know there are barriers to that, right? So if I'm a consumer, I'm not going to come out to TPI. Maybe I'm a little nervous about getting fit. Maybe I want to hit a demo day or something like that. What would you tell that person? Because the fitting part is so critical to get that performance right. Where does that person go? How do they do something better than just walking in or ordering something off, some online shop or whatever?
Like Titleist.com.
Yeah, or go to Titleist.com. Yeah.
But I think honestly, the answer is going to be go to Titleist.com and type in your zip code and see public-private fittings that are available near you. Is looking at that list and finding that our teams inside do a really good job of curating that list of saying what's available near me, whether it's at a club I'm a member at or a public facility or a demo day type thing. My opinion would be the demo day is going to just add pressure and speed and time,
Right.
where that's going to cause more angst. Whereas if you can get into a one-on-one situation where the fitter can ask questions, I think that's probably your experiences here at TPI is, when do I get to hit a golf ball? Why does he keep asking me questions?
Right. Right.
Is having that fitter get to know you and your game.
Who
And,
let you through the gate?
And how did you get in here? Yeah, that's the first question.
where you talked about Aaron Dill even asking you about your driver swing. You're like, we're doing wedges, Aaron.
Yeah. What are you new?
First day on the job.
Right, first day? Must be new here, yeah.
That they can get to know your game real quickly, find your tendencies. If you're not swinging your best that day, they can still get you in product that's going to help you solve those issues. And you're going to, at the end of the day, what is the goal of a club fitting? It's that I'm going to have more fun on the golf course, which typically means I'm writing a smaller number on the scorecard. And so having that fitter help define that for you 14 times, okay, hitting it farther, is that going to make you happier? Mm-hmm. Is it hitting it straighter? Let's find those answers throughout your bag.
Yeah, no, it works for me.
It's good.
Other questions, Tony? Anything else that we missed? Is there anything else on T-Series that you're like, man, this is the one thing people ever hear about Titleist T-Series? What do you want them to walk away with? What didn't we get to? What's something you want to make sure everybody understands?
Well, I'd want them to say, if they haven't experienced the product, go experience the product. And that'll give them everything they need to know. It's like, just go find a fitter, find a place where you can demo this product, and it speaks for itself.
And that'd be the big thing for me is, I think for both of you even, don't go in knowing which model I want. Go in saying, I want something that performs and feels great, and then let that fitting drive you to the mix that's going to do that for you.
Yeah, that's how it played out for
I
me.
was going to say sometimes that means you end up with the 350s, Tony. Sometimes that's exactly what it means. But
It's a big iron.
it is a big iron, and it's perfectly fit for you.
It is.
So
And
Same.
but it's not the biggest iron, right? There are
No.
definitely bigger irons out there, right? But we've chosen that as our form factor for our largest iron.
I think it looks pretty good.
It works. Unfortunately, for
Well,
me.
thank you guys for your time and
course.
knowledge and sharing some of that with us. You're going to have questions out there, people. Post them below. Let us know what we can do. Anything we can answer, these guys will answer. If they can't answer it, it's just because they probably don't want to, or they're legally bound not to answer it, or something like that. But until next time, we out.